When I grow up, I want to work for a woke company, like super woke.
When I grow up,
I want to be hired based on what I look like,
rather than my skills.
I want to be judged
By my political beliefs.
I want to get promoted
based on my chromosomes. When I grow up,
I want to be offended
by my coworkers.
and walk around the office
On eggshells.
and have my words policed.
By HR. Words like
Grandfather.
peanut gallery.
Long time no see.
no can do.
When I grow up,
I want to be obsessed with emotional safety
and do workplace sensitivity training.
all day long. When I grow up, I want to climb the corporate ladder.
just by following the crowd.
I want to be a conformist.
I want to weaponize my pronouns. What are pronouns?
It's time to grow up and get back to work. Introducing the #1 woke-free job board in America, redballoon.work.
Hey y'all, welcome to Cross Politics on the Fight Laugh Feast Network. Pastor Toby Chuck Knox, I'm the Water Boy. You guys got to stick around for the show because there's a lot of states that are going to be taking on ESA, school choice programs, starting in January, and you need to be thinking clearly about how to fight this because we don't want to fight socialism with socialism. Secondly, our magazine. Our latest magazine now, American Marriage Sodomized, and I was reading through this article. This author wrote this article. It was really interesting.
It's you.
Yeah, I wrote.
Right.
You're going to read from your own article.
I'm going to read from my own article. I do this every magazine. I did this last time too.
So much humility.
Just to tease you. The title of my article is Politics of Marriage.
Didn't you tell people to stick around for the show?
I did.
I see why now.
Politics of Marriage. And towards the end of one of the paragraphs says Christians for far too long have handed their kids over to the world through public education, rampant individualistic worldviews, withholding their kids from participating in church life, worshiping together, participating in the sacraments, and viewing their kids as unbelievers until their kids hopefully and eventually are brought to the Lord's Supper or baptized upon confession.
Yeah.
I originally just had the baptized upon confession. And Rep Burns called me. He's like, man, it looks like you're just taking a shot at Baptists. And I was like, well, I mean, it kind of was.
Right.
and then he said, well, is there a way you can, take a shot on both sides? And I was like, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Don't you love I love my Baptist friends that way. It's like,
I was like, thank you, Rhett.
You're right.
And so
I need to hit all of us.
Yeah. So I said, or until the kids
Presbyterians.
hopefully and eventually are brought to the Lord's Supper, which is our Presbyterian brothers.
Yeah.
Or are eventually baptized upon confession.
He's like, yeah.
And I was like, thank you, Rhett. And then lastly, it says,
oh, you got more.
Don't starve your kids. This is actually important.
Don't need to buy the magazine.
Yeah, no. This is actually, the article is way better than the quotes I'm giving you.
Dave's going to read the whole thing right here.
These are just like okay quotes.
Okay.
Like 6 out of 10, we got Toby going. Toby going. It says, don't starve your kids, feed them. If parents are insecure about God's promises, then it should not be surprising that your kids grow up and be insecure about their faith.
Yeah.
And this is what
you want to read from your article? This is what, go for it.
My article is the least of these. All right, you guys got to get this magazine worth. You got to get it.
Price of the magazine.
American Marriage Sodomized. All right. Every time I write an article, I make sure you get a quote.
Great show.
This year, our Fight Laugh Feast conference is at the Ark Encounter in Kentucky on the politics of 6-day creation. The politics of 6-day creation is the difference between a fixed standard of justice and a careening standard of justice. The difference between the corrosive relativism that creates mobs and anarchy and the freedom of objectivity, truth, and due process. The politics of 6-day creation establishes the authority and the sufficiency of God's word for all of life. From what is a man? What is a woman? What is marriage? When does human life begin? How is human society best organized? All of that is found in Genesis 1, 2, and 3. It's all there. Man. So come out, join us here. Ken Ham, Pastor Doug Wilson, Dr. Ben Merkel, Dr. Gordon Wilson,
Gabe.
Joe Rigney,
that's right.
Michael
Foster.
Yes. Gabe will be there.
I'll have a quote for you.
And he's going to bring up his magazine and read you a quote from his article. We'll be doing a live show on Christian nationalism.
Oh, I can't wait.
With Joel Webbin,
Stephen Wolf, and
Pastor Doug.
Webben. So, and Pastor Doug. Yeah, we're really grateful to have them for the live show. So mark your calendars, October 11th through the 14th as we fight, laugh, and feast with beer and psalms.
That's right.
Our amazing lineup of speakers, rowdy Christian merch, Sabbath feast to wrap it all up on Saturday evening. And don't forget, club members,
$100 off.
You get $100 off your registration.
You're losing money if you don't sign up.
Practically like losing money.
Yeah.
And if you're not a club member yet, this is a great time to join. Get your club membership, then go over and register and get that $100 off. And visit Fight Laugh Feast to find all of that information and register today.
And there's emails coming out. We do a pastor's lunch on Friday. We do a business CEO lunch on Saturday. So there'll be emails coming out to be able to sign up for that. The pastor's lunch is free. The business lunch is like $25.
There's also a pre-business conference.
And then there's a pre-business conference where we got the CEO of Gibson Go, the CEO of Maddox, and our boy Dave Bonson. I mean, that's 4 hours, and then we do a little Cross Politics does a kind of a roundtable discussion at the end. So it's 4 hours, very quick, but last year's conference is fantastic.
Business makers can sign up for that at
fightlaughfeast.com. It's like $50 or $49, $59, something like that.
Come for the conference. Stay through Saturday for the business luncheon. Write the whole thing off.
That's right.
I do have to say the Fight Laugh Feast conference is one of the most high value conferences out there.
I mean, where else do you get free beer? Which Christian conference? Which Christian conference?
You know, I was talking to Virgil Walker.
Maybe this is probably the only other one.
I was talking to Virgil Walker when I was down in Atlanta, and he's like, "Man, why do you do that? Why don't you charge for that? Why don't you charge for that?
That's because we're Christians."
I was like, "Virgil, you're a Baptist. We're Presbyterians. We like to give it away."
Hey, we're really grateful to have with us right now Dr. Tom Askew. He's is the Southern Arizona coordinator of Arizona Christian School Tuition Organization. That's the ACSTO.
Okay.
Arizona's largest scholarship organization for private schools. Tom has been involved with the ACSTO since 2001 and has been a school coordinator for 33 schools in Southern Arizona. Tom's career as teacher and administrator spans 48 years. With 47 of those years in private Christian schools. He's also a U.S. Army veteran and spent 2 years as a missionary in Hong Kong. Tom, thanks for joining us on Cross Politics.
What a resume.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Well, appreciate you.
And I went to junior college, and he's like an Army veteran, spent time in Hong Kong.
He didn't have 2 lives by the time I was born.
Tom,
I'm a really old dude.
Well, we love talking into old dudes. And as you know, and as Gabe mentioned at the beginning of the show, one of the there's a massive swell going on in our country right now, where it is very popular to be talking about school choice, ESAs, voucher programs, all this kind of stuff. And there's been a few bills passed, and there's a bunch coming. And so it's a very strategic moment, particularly for those of us who are committed to Christian education, who believe that government schools have been basically enslaving us and enslaving our land for far too long. So I believe that we are with you 110% on breaking government school monopoly. But I got to ask you, when Arizona passed their ESA bill, I think it was last year or the year before, why was it so bad?
Well, you're presupposing that I agree with you that it was bad.
Yes.
It's difficult to answer that without giving you some history. That's the teacher in me.
Yep.
Because that bill didn't come out of a vacuum. It has an enormous background to it. And that background has safeguards built into it that keep it from being as bad as you may think it is. The Arizona was a pioneer in school choice in 1997. In 1997, the first school choice tax credit law was passed for scholarships of any state in the country. And since 1997, 19 other states have copied Arizona's law. But I always hasten to add, none are as generous as Arizona's law in terms of the tax credit scholarship program. ESAs came along later, and really for a very specific purpose. They were not designed originally just to benefit parents who wanted their kids to get scholarships for private schools. The first ESA law in Arizona was passed in 2011, and it was specifically for students with disabilities. Some of those happened to be in private schools as well. And so those schools that served those students were able to get some of those funds but the funds, all ESA funds, are to the benefit of a parent who may choose to use them at a private school as a vendor, or at any other kind of vendor. I'll say more about that later. Since then, the ESA law has been expanded consistently in 2012 to include students from failing school districts, in 2013 to include brand new kindergartners, in 2014 to include siblings of previous ESA student recipients, also in 2014 to include students whose parents had been killed in the line of duty, in 2015 to include students who lived in boundaries of Indian reservation, and in 2016 to include students of parents who were legally blind, deaf, or hard of hearing. The bill that you refer to as the new bill was, as you correctly identified, passed in 2022. And basically, as you can see, rather than just expanding it to more specific populations, it just became a universal bill. All school-age children in Arizona can receive an ESA. The exact amount varies a little bit from district to district, but it's around $7,000 a year per head.
What does ESA stand for? Education Scholarship?
Empowerment Scholarship Account.
Empowerment Scholarship Account.
Whenever anything's called empowerment, think Marxism. But here's so I read through the text of the bill from last year, and the things that stood out to me that I'd love to, granted, it was a very loaded way of asking the question, and I did that on purpose. But
it worked.
My question, my concern, the thing that stood out to me was, first of all, you have the government education budget in Arizona has ballooned. Like the line is going like this. As ESAs have expanded, it looks to me like it's just adding to the overall government budget for education, which means the government, the more of the government money you have, the bigger the government to run it all. That's more socialism. That's higher taxes. And then the other thing that really stood out to me was that students that take advantage of the ESA thing, for every student that does that, there's money being pumped back into the district that they left. So it's like it's just ballooning financially, higher taxes, higher property taxes, more government dependence, and then it looks like even the old traditional government schools kind of get kickbacks when it happens. How is that good?
Yeah, I forgot when I was preparing my notes for today that you had said that in a previous. This is really what started me wanting to address you about ESAs in Arizona. It is not true, and I would have to reread the bill myself to see what you base this on. But I did check with my boss, who is a former legislator in Arizona, who's been a leader in the school choice fight in Arizona for over 20 years. And he assures me that there isn't actually any money going back to the district that the child leaves to compensate for them getting an ESA that could be used in a private school. The basic mechanism is that the money follows the child. In fact, if what you say were true, the public school teacher unions wouldn't be so upset with us over both tax credit scholarships and ESAs. The public schools in Arizona average right now about $14,000 per head for a student, and 40% of that comes from property taxes. Another 40 to 45% from the state budget, the money that you looked at in the bill, and 10 to sometimes 18 or 20% from federal funds like Title I, Title II, and so on. So the money that was allocated for students to go to district schools, again, was about $7,000 a head. And that money can now instead go to vendors that the parents choose on behalf of their child.
Where's the other $7,000 going?
Yeah.
What are the
You said there was 14,000, right? There was 14,000
per head.
per
Yes.
head.
But only 7,000 comes from the state budget. The other 7,000 comes from federal and property taxes.
So you're saying the state is allocating just the state's
Funds.
part in that budget number.
Yes.
So
Okay.
where the other 7,000 going?
Well,
Well,
Yeah,
it's come from the county.
Property
taxes.
No, I think
Private schools get no benefit from property tax.
that it doesn't come because what happens is the federal government matches the number of actual students. Isn't that right, Tom?
No, federal funds aren't based on numbers of students. They're based on numbers of students with special needs.
Okay. So, but I guess to Knox's question, he's saying so. There's about
I'm not that good at math, but
$14,000. About $7,000 is given by the state from taxes. Somebody opts out and says, "I'm going to do an ESA." That $7,000 follows that student. Knox is asking, where is the other $7,000 going?
Oh, it's still in the hands of the district.
Okay, right. So that part stays. So now, but that means in effect though. They get
an increase.
They get $7,000 for one less student.
So that may be what you misread as they get extra money for students that leave.
No, actually, what I looked it up just a second ago while you were reading the text of the bill says that they get $600 more added back into their budget when a student leaves. That's in the Arizona bill.
$600 more.
$600
Okay,
more.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not tons, but I think you do have. I mean, but what you've said though is if $7,000 stays with the school,
and then they get additional $600,
and they have one student less, how is that not a raise?
Not a raise for what?
So if a local school has 10 students and they're getting a certain amount of money,
$14,000 per kid,
and then one of those students leaves, so now they have a little less work to do.
Only 7,000 leaves.
Right. And 7,000 stays with one less student.
It stays in the district. It doesn't stay in the school. The district can allot it wherever it wants to.
Okay.
Right. So
usually by hiring more administrators.
Which I don't want.
Yeah. So I think, Tom, are kind of, as we've been talking about this for 2 years or so, and, I think all of us want to break the monopoly of government schools.
Absolutely.
But the thing that gets the thing I get stuck on is fighting, socialism with socialism. Basically, the money goes to the state regardless, or to your county, whatever. The money goes to the government. And then if you opt out and take an ESA or whatever, the government funds that ESA and is still funding the public schools. And then you can choose where to go to your school of choice, but the government's still recycling that money. That to me is just like fighting socialism with socialism, which I'm having a hard time with.
Let me see if I can follow what you're saying. Nobody is more opposed to the government continuing to award itself more money for any purpose than we are. Our position as an organization, ACSTO, and we have been a leader in school choice, as I said, for over 20 years. And long before the ESA law went universal, thousands of students have received our tax credit scholarships. And I may say one more historical thing about why that's clean money in a minute. But long before then, I lost my train of thought. The point is that schools have always known that we have to protect ourselves from any possible incursion by the government on what we do. And so the law has been tested very carefully by lawyers that represent the private Christian schools to assure us every year that there are no requirements of your school that the government can make in terms of curriculum, philosophy, anything like that.
Right.
I want to respond to Toby's thing by saying, yes, we are hoping to break this government monopoly. And so our position as an organization has always been, we support all forms of school choice, out of district transfers, charter schools, private schools, and homeschooling. That's just a philosophical position we take legally, but obviously we prefer Christian schools.
Right.
And that's where because we're only a Christian school supporting organization, that's where all our efforts go. Yeah.
Go ahead. I want you to finish your thought first. Go ahead.
Oh, so we are sometimes partners with other people in the school choice movement who aren't Christians. But
Sure.
believe me, at the end, our interest is in supporting and protecting Christian schools.
So here's the question I have. So one of the things that the incrementalists have gotten wrong in the abortion movement is that they don't have another play after they just run their last one. It just looks like the same play that they've ran last time.
Let's go 15 weeks. Let's go 14 weeks. Let's go 13 weeks.
And it's just
that's extreme. That's too extreme.
Right.
Too
Exactly.
Extreme.
Too extreme. And then we step back and then So I guess the question in this case, if you're trying to break the monopoly, what's the next thing that moves up that says, okay, this is...
Here's the next step.
Here's how we get towards the end of actually breaking the real monopoly. What's the next step in this in your world?
Well, I'm not sure, other than to continue to steal as many students as we can. I will tell you, though, what we think about when we look ahead to the future. You may know that Arizona has a Democratic government who's very opposed to school choice, ESAs, and every other form of school choice. And she is already, so for example, in the 23 legislature, the session that just ended, there was a very benign bill that would have saved some paperwork and how we manage tax credit scholarship money in Arizona. And just to make the teachers unions happy, she vetoed it, although it wouldn't have cost the state a cent or taken any more students away from public school. She just wanted to show that she hates school choice. For that reason, she is actively campaigning to get, we only have a slight Republican majority in the state legislature, both the House and the Senate, a couple votes in each. And she's campaigning very hard right now with tons of Democratic money to get a majority in the legislature in the next election. And that way she feels she can take her war against ESAs and against tax credit scholarships and every other form of school choice. Here's what we say to the schools that we partner with. We partner with 130 Christian schools in Arizona. And as you said earlier, I'm responsible for 33 of those. Here's what we say to our schools. And by the way, all of our schools have had an increase in enrollment in the last 3 years. But it isn't just from the availability of ESAs. What started the enrollment burst was COVID.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the bad response of the public schools in Arizona to COVID. And secondly, comprehensive sexuality education. And I might say more about that in a minute. But our schools are bursting at the seams. We have waiting lists where I'm consulting personally right now with 3 new schools that may open very soon, one by this fall, and most of them are adding rooms and buildings. But what we say to our schools consistently is, ESA money hangs by a thread. It could disappear with a new government, new legislature, and so on. But this is your opportunity to take all of these new students that you're getting. And by the way, when we do educational workshops for these new parents, they are so grateful to be there. They had never thought private school was anywhere in their radar at all. And they love the Christian schools. And they're saying, my kids have decent friends now. Where did this come from?
Right.
We didn't know that was possible. And what we're saying to the schools is, you need to make your schools so desirable that if all of this disappears, these families will find a way to stay there.
Mm-hmm. I certainly appreciate that point a lot. I think the flip side of this that I think is a pretty massive warning alarm going off is Canada actually was one of the first Western
school choice nations
that went full bore on school choice, which has essentially come to mean that all private schools are under the jurisdiction of the state. And I know that when that was first going down the pike, all the promises and all the language and all the legislation was there that said that private schools can keep being private schools. But we know how Democrats and liberals think about constitutions and laws.
Private don't mean private.
It doesn't really matter to them. Ultimately, money is hooks, which is actually, I wanted to get back to something you said earlier. You mentioned in passing that you thought tax credit money is clean money. And I wanted to give you a chance to explain what do you mean by that?
Well, it's doesn't come directly from the state to our schools. It comes when the law was passed. It just gives taxpayers. This is state income tax. Unfortunately, we have state income tax in Arizona.
Right.
It gives the state income taxpayer a choice to continue sending his tax money to the Department of Revenue in Phoenix, or to donate it to a private school tuition organization. And we award scholarships for that money. The taxpayer gets a receipt from us, and when they file their state income tax, the state looks at that receipt and says, "Oh, you've already paid your state tax, so here's your normal withholding, and we're adding back to it the $1,000 you contributed to a scholarship organization."
So it's actually a donation that they get a tax credit on at the end of the year.
It's a donation from a private individual to a private nonprofit.
Is that money? I mean, a lot of times tax credits are different than getting your own income back. There's a refund. I paid too much in with holdings and I get my refund. But oftentimes tax credits are actually a small form of socialism where I'm getting someone else's money. They pay tax. No,
you're getting your own money back.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, though. A refund is my own money coming back to me, but often a tax credit is money I like. So early on, for example, when I was making, I'm still don't make much, but but when I was really poor and I had 3 kids or 4 kids, I could see the money that I'd paid into the system, and I would claim that to get it back, and then the program or the tax filer would always ask me, "Do you want these extra child tax credits?"
Oh, those are like earned income credits.
Yeah.
No, that's money from the state.
Right, that's what I mean. But you're saying this credit is not someone else's money; it's your own money.
Yes.
Okay.
And furthermore, let me underscore this. Early on, this program became very popular in Arizona in the early 2000s. It was, as I said, it was passed in 1997. And right away, there was a challenge based on the Blaine Amendment. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yes.
Every state has a Blaine Amendment that says no government funds can be used to support religious schools. And so a taxpayer named Mrs. Wynn, W-I-N-N, challenged that. That meant that the tax credit meant that part of her money was going to support religious schools. And I'm not going to give the whole history. It is a fascinating story, but it took it 8 years to go through the district and circuit and state courts. And the first time it went to the Supreme Court of the United States, it wasn't heard for a technical reason called standing. And then it went back again. And in 2002, and out of the 50 scholarship organizations in Arizona, we were the plaintiff, ACSTL, and the Supreme Court decision is on the books, ACSTO versus Wynn, that this is not government money, this is not state money, this is private money that the private individual chooses to send to a scholarship organization, and the state merely recognizes that that's a public benefit and gives them a credit against their state income tax.
I know this wouldn't work in the court, but either your money is going to fund Christian schools or my money is going to fund pagan ones, right? So how about nobody's making that argument? Like, I don't want to fund schools that aren't religious.
That.
You know what I mean?
Oh, we've complained about that for years.
Yeah. But, so Tom, I want to ask you, as I'm listening to this and I keep hearing, I think Christians right now on almost every subject or topic could do with a good counsel. Evangelicals, those that are inside of politics, those that are inside the church, come together and let's have some counsels and figure out how to work through this and make some plays that start from where we are and to where we want to get to and map out how we do it. Because right now, it seems like that we're all over the place, but we don't have a unified thought about this. And I don't know how, I think it's going to take us longer to get there if we don't figure out how to come together on this conversation and say, what are we trying to accomplish? And what are the steps that we need to take to get there in evangelicalism?
That's part of the difference between us and the private school subsidies in Canada. From the beginning, the very first legislator that in Arizona proposed the tax credit law in 1997 was a Christian and a member of a conservative church. And all along, we've had Christians in the legislature. I mentioned my boss, Mr. Steve Yarbrough, and he was in the legislature for 20 years and formed the school choice caucus in the legislature. And all along, we've had our voices that have counseled together and listened to school administrators and worked with us closely to make sure that we're safe from government intervention. But other states, I have noticed, are not as careful, and their ESA laws could be more restrictive.
So
hold on. Okay. Jesus is Lord in public and in private. Every area of life must be subject to his lordship, and our use of technology is no exception. What captures our attention on the screen either glorifies or dishonors our Lord. That's why accountable to you, that's the word accountable, the number 2, the word you, is committed to promoting biblical accountability in our families and our churches. Their monitoring and reporting software makes transparency easy on all your devices, so you can say with the psalmist, I will not set anything worthless before my eyes. Guard against temptation with accountable to you. Again, that's the word accountable, the number 2, the word you, and live for God's glory. Learn more and try it for free at accountable2you.com/FLF.
So just to get clarity in my mind, it sounds like the ESA program in Arizona is where a private family donates to one of these scholarships, and then they get a receipt to do a tax write-off.
That's the old tax credit.
No, that's the tax credit program.
That's not the ESA program.
Okay. So I'm confused then. What is this Arizona ESA? How's it going from private money to private money to private? How's it not socialism?
Well, first of all, let me just say that private school families in Arizona do have to choose one of 2 paths to finance their education if they're not paying out of pocket. So they can't combine ESA money with tax credit scholarship money. And so schools whose tuition is much more than $7,000 a year, and that's many of our best Christian schools, their families still keep using tax credit scholarships because the potential to get a full scholarship is there, whereas ESA money is going to top out at about $7,000. How is ESA not socialism? Well, I don't know an easy answer for that, other than that if you don't use it, you're not subject to the socialist whims of the government.
But it is government money.
It is government money. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I did think of the answer to Toby's earlier point while you were doing your ad. The 600 or so that you said the district gets back for the kids that leave for ESAs.
Yeah,
that's because the 7,000 that a private school parent gets is only 90. It's only 90% of what the government budgeted for the public schools. So they give them the other 10%, which in some cases would be 600 more or less.
Okay, interesting. I'm still pretty concerned about the whole setup, but are we out of time? We got to go.
Yeah.
The thing that I keep thinking, and maybe this is something we can talk with you again sometime, Tom, about. But
I'd like to leave with my proposal.
Yeah, okay. But part of my question, and I think this is going to lead right into yours, is I'm still unsure of why we have not yet been able just to simply raise a straightforward free market flag. And what I mean by that is, in no other area of the market am I required to pay for things I'm not buying. Like, why, if the government said you have to buy this soap, you have to buy this car, there's a whole bunch of people I think that I hope would say, what? I don't want to pay for things I don't want.
How's Ukraine getting money again?
My crane?
Ukraine.
Oh, yeah. Stop it.
Okay.
My crane? Yeah, what is wrong with my crane? But I think I'm hungry and eager to see some Christians say, you know what, let's just fly a free market flag. Call it the libertarian flag, whatever. I'm not even a libertarian, but like, why should I pay for schools I don't want to use? And I want to keep my money and pay for the education I want to pay for my kids. Why can't we run that play? And why do we have to keep going through the government in order to get ask master of the plantation?
Council.
If I can please. I have thoughts about that too, and I'm not sure about it, Knox, but I appreciate it, but I don't know if that's how we're going to get things done, actually.
Well, I
have a quick answer.
Yeah,
Please,
all right, quick.
yeah.
We have to destroy the mandatory attendance law. I've been fighting against that for years.
Okay.
Why is that important?
Well, because then they wouldn't have any say over where our kids are at all anyway.
They ain't got nothing over mine.
Well, I guess Idaho doesn't have that because
mandatory attendance law.
I've never had
Almost every state has a mandatory attendance law.
but I don't have to tell the state where my kids are ever.
I understand that, but I'm saying that it would make us one more step removed from any of their interests.
You
I appreciate it.
You don't own your kids if they got to tell you where they got to be at.
Here's, I want to end with my proposal.
All right.
I'm actually working on this in Idaho with some legislators.
Does this have anything to do with the council?
No, council. We're
This is
long.
actually where I'm going to side with Gabe.
We're a long ways away from that.
I'm with Gabe on this one.
So I take Robert Borton's point about don't fight socialism with socialism. That's a helpful point. And so one of the things that I'm proposing with the legislator, hopefully we're checking the laws and checking the books and talking to lawyers and all that stuff. What we're trying to do is we're saying if a family wants to opt out of the public school system, is that you get to keep the portion of your property tax that normally would go to the public school system and use it for your own. Yeah. Now, the crazy thing about this is actually a very cheap way for the state to do this. Because your property tax, about 50% of your property taxes go to public schools here in Idaho. And so that means, probably on average, it's probably around $2,000 a year that you would keep.
Right.
Most ESA, most voucher programs are
$6,000, $7,000. So this would actually be a relatively inexpensive way to do it.
And it does two things.
Yeah.
For one, it doesn't do the socialism recycle thing. Mm-hmm. You just get to keep your property taxes immediately. The 50% that goes towards public school.
Imagine that.
Number two is it starts to put a dent in to property taxes.
Property taxes.
Yeah, I like that.
Which are wicked.
And so that's what I think should be happening.
Okay.
Tom, you got the last word.
Yeah.
I agree with that, and that is related to the mandatory attendance law. The reason they steal our property taxes is because these are schools for all our kids. So all of you have to participate by giving your property tax.
Wow. Yeah. Man, I appreciate you, Tom. Thanks for talking to us.
Yeah.
And hope we can keep in touch.
Absolutely. If you're single, get married. If you're married, have you some kids. And if you have kids, go baptize them. Until tomorrow, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Go fight, laugh, and feast. This is Cross Politics. So you don't like a council idea? Really? What if council's been bad for us?
Yeah.
Been pretty good.
You never heard of all the other ones?
The ones that been...
The Word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the division of soul and of spirit, of joints and marrow. Through the Spirit, God's Word changes lives. It cuts us to the heart and reshapes us. As you strive to read and study Scripture, having a good set of tools can help. From setting reminders for a great reading plan, to word studies and commentaries that shed light on difficult passages, to listening on the go, the Olive Tree Bible app can help you dig into the Word wherever you are. Olive Tree Bible app. Read, study, listen, anywhere.